Welcome back to Up in the Rafters, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this college basketball season. I'm Taylor Vippolis hosting this. And as always, joining me, he's a national champion, Final Four's most outstanding player, a Carolina basketball legend, Joel Berry. Joel, first off, I'm glad you made it back safely from Bristol, got out of there before the weather got bad. But man, it's been a rough 2 days for the ACC.
Man, it was rough, man. I don't even know what to say at this point, honestly. I mean, we came out of the gate and it was 5-0, and then from there it was Clemson saved the night basically by they not only just getting a win, but the substance of the win, beating the number 4 team in the country. So all in all, it was rough, and then it just kind of rough. Just me being a Florida boy and snow doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. I think you work for the ACC Network. I love ACC basketball. Me and you have been the two strongest defenders. Where it's like, hey, you put these teams in the tournament, the ACC teams are going to show out. The past 2 days, even I'm like, something something might be in the water here.
This is like a under the hood problem. A conversation that's longer than this podcast can hold. But I just think the integrity of the ACC has sort of been lost because of just the nature of college sports, in that money is being dumped into football. But like I said, that's longer than what we can hold here. So we got some more important business to get to in this podcast.
Yeah, getting to the Carolina game, Carolina did the conference no favors with a top 10 Alabama team coming to Chapel Hill and beating the Tar Heels 94-79. Before we get into specific questions, what were your biggest takeaways watching this game?
I like the defensive intensity that they came out with initially, with given the fact that they've had these big deficits in the games. And I just really thought Alabama just looked off. Like the first 5 minutes of the game, I'm like, okay, this is the type of intensity that Carolina needs on defense. And then it just went away. And Alabama turned into the Bama that we all know, and that's running and gunning. And it turned into a basically a straight line drive. If I don't have a layup, I'm tossing it out for the 3-point line. And it's just hard to, when you don't have that intensity against a high paced uh, team like Alabama, it's hard to guard. So overall, there were bright spots when Carolina actually played defense, and then also Ian Jackson, which we'll get to. But I think just taking those little bits and pieces of where Carolina actually dug in defensively, and then seeing what Ian Jackson did. I'm trying to spin this in the most positive way. Those were the two bright spots for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you after what we saw in this game against Alabama and what we saw in Maui, where some of the struggles on this team, they're going to be pretty hard to cover up as the year goes on.
Yeah.
Where would you say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, your level of panic is, your level of concern, where this team can still correct things, but they might not be able to overcome some of the areas where their shortcomings are.
Yeah. So looking at it from a positive standpoint, all right, Carolina has had very stiff competition. Kansas, Auburn, now Alabama. The only team that gave them problems that is not at that level is Dayton. And then obviously Michigan State, they're not ranked, but they're a good team. Tom Izzo always has very, very aggressive physical teams. So that's looking at it from that perspective. But putting it in the box of like looking at the concerns, it is concerning, because you have Elliot Cadeau who only has 1 point, and I like there were times I was like, is he even on the floor? Which is concerning for me with being one of the focal points of the team. In the same way, Seth Trimble was pretty non-existent. It was RJ, which turned into a very inefficient night for him. And then I already alluded to Ian Jackson, but it's concerning, man. It's concerning. And we'll dive deeper into it. But I'm at the verge of almost panicking.
Yeah, I think that's where I am too on my level of worry for this team, because you're watching some of the problems with this team. Like right now, it feels like Carolina's bigs are giving them next to nothing. And you're looking at where you are on the calendar. The portal's closed. This isn't the NBA. There's no
No
trades to be
midseason.
made. This is Carolina's roster, and when you're looking at the roster, there's obvious holes that had to kind of be fixed during the roster construction period and the evaluation process, where Carolina, strikes out on the bigs, and they
Yep.
they bring in somebody like Cade Tyson, who really hasn't given them that much. What did you see this offseason with Carolina trying to address the bigs, and then what the bigs have either given Carolina so far or haven't given Carolina so far?
Yeah, I know I can speak for a lot of people. To your point about the bigs, like now people are seeing why Carolina focused on going out and getting bigs, because that's what we needed. But I'm just concerned, like I'm I don't know what's going on with Carolina and not having bigs like it was almost like big country. Like if Carolina was on your radar, oh, I'm it's like no thought. I'm going there. I'm talking about like the Tyler Zellers, the Tyler Hansboroughs, the John Hensons, like Kennedy Meeks, Isaiah Bryce. Like you go on, and now it's not there. So that's concerning to me. But as of right now in this space, that's why Carolina in this offseason, they were going out and looking for a big. And when they lost out, it was devastating. And you talk to the coaching staff, it was devastating for them to miss out on these bigs. And now you see why. You see why Carolina was doing that. And with the whole Cade Tyson thing, I hope that he does find his rhythm. They need it. They need a guy that can catch and shoot. But this is another challenge in the portal for teams, is you don't know how that sort of talent on that type of mid-major level translates to high caliber basketball. And that's where people are like in the transfer portal are just like it's hard to do that sometimes, because you don't strike out with a Dalton Connect. Programs just don't do that. And this is the case as of right now, is that you just see that it's not translating. But like I said, from a positive standpoint, a lot of season left, and hopefully he does find his stride.
Yeah, since Hubert Davis took over as the head coach in 2021 with that class, you look at who they've brought in from a big perspective. It was Dawson Garcia was a miss. Jalen Washington seems pretty limited in the class of 2022. You have Will Shaver, who's not even on the roster anymore. In 2023, it was Okonwu, not on the roster anymore. You have the class of 2024, James Brown. So since the class of 2020, when Roy got Walker Kessler and Day'Ron
Sharp,
two of the best centers in the country, yeah, it's been a huge concern for Carolina, and I think there was some hope that they would be able to address it in the transfer portal. In this NIL era, their numbers and some of the target numbers didn't add up when you're talking about somebody like Danny Wolf at Michigan, who,
yeah,
if you haven't seen Danny Wolf right now, there's probably some buyer's remorse there for Carolina not getting him into their program. because I watched him in that Michigan game and
Yeah.
in the Nebraska game, and they kind of run that two big system with him and the guy from FAU
Yeah.
that Dusty May brought over. Yeah,
Yep.
and he went for the past two games against number 22 Xavier. He went for 20 and 14, and then against Wisconsin he went for 20 and 7, while adding in 8 assists over those two games too.
And
So
that's from afar, and they saw one in action that they tried to go after, Clifford Moray.
yep.
That's one that they missed out on. So you saw that in action, but it it's a complex situation because it's part of the recruiting, but we know now part of the recruiting is NIL, and so it's like now the boosters, the people who are given to the program, like there has to be money. It is what it is. Like I can't sugarcoat it, but there has to be more money if you want to go out and get high caliber players like that, because that's just the environment we're in. So it's a little bit of the basketball side, but it's also now with being able to have that pot, if you will, to be able to give these guys the money to be able to get them in. It's just it's difficult, but I just think it's concerning that a program like Carolina, who are known for bigs, to your point, since 2020, we just haven't landed any of those bigs that we can that have played at that level.
Yeah, and I think even in the NIL era, I think one of the most puzzling things from that period is, Carolina hasn't recruited a high-end big over that stretch, but it's not like over that stretch they didn't have a productive big. Armando Bacot was one of the best centers in the country, so you would think that people would watch what Bacot is doing and being like, I could go to North Carolina, have a similar skill set, and if I'm one of these high end prospects, my level of play will translate similar to what Bacot did and all the success he had at Carolina. But one of the players you mentioned earlier that really struggled in the Alabama game, it was Elliot Cadeau. 1 point, 0 for 4 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3. He had 4 assists to 4 turnovers. Since the Maui Invitational in 4 games, he has an 18 to 16 assist to turnover ratio, shooting under 40% from field over that stretch. He's almost felt like the key at times, where when at times he looks lost on the court, and those are the times where teams are really starting to put some distance on North Carolina and the scoreboard. What have you seen from Cadeau over this stretch, to where it does feel like after a strong start to the year, he's kind of taken a few steps back?
Yeah, well, you have to look at like the makeup of Elliott. Elliott is a pass first point guard. And I think kind of the scoring is something that's just, he can do it, but I don't think it comes natural to him. I think it's like a mindset shift where, not natural from like the ability, but natural from like the standpoint of I want to get, I want to get assists, I want to get playmake, I want to get the ball to the guys for them to do it. When they need him to score the ball, all the 50% of their points before Alabama's game came from those three: Elliott, RJ, and Seth. So they need him to score the ball. And I just think it's hard on the offense right now because the only person who can catch and shoot in the starting lineup is RJ. And teams are like, hey, we'll live with Seth and Elliott shooting threes. Because they would rather pump fake and get into the lane. Like it's not like they can't shoot threes. It's just it doesn't come natural to them. So their first initial reaction is to pump fake and try to get in the lane. So I think that mindset for Elliott has to change. And like there's a play that sticks out in my mind, 2 plays in the Michigan State game. There was one where he passed it and was wide. I mean, the next closest person was in the paint and he just passed it. And then it came back to him and he shot it and he made it. And then there was another play overtime that where it came back to him and he initially just shot it and he made it. Like that's what they need him to do. He has to be that catch and shoot guy. He can continue to do the assists, but they need some guys out there that are going to catch and shoot because you can only go into the paint so much. And that's part of where the turnovers have come from because he's playing in crowds where he has to dip his shoulder and he's getting these offensive fouls.
Yeah, it feels like the offense kind of goes with him, and when he's playing well, the ball's moving very well. When he's struggling, you see this lack of ball movement. You see the ball sticking a lot more. What could Carolina try to do offensively to try to shake some things up?
I totally understand you want to give respect where respect is due. Seth has worked his butt off, man, and I think he's playing like one of the best guards in the country. Really good two-way player. Elliott the same way. I would challenge the staff to look at a different lineup. And when I'm saying this, I'm thinking about Pitt had Ishmael Leggett, who ended up being the sixth man of the year. He transferred in, older guard, started for majority of the season. All of a sudden, Jalen Lowe is playing really well, and Jeff Capel sends Ishmael Leggett to the bench. And he ends up being sixth man of the year, but he made the change for the team because that's what the team needed. And now Ishmael came in that second lineup and was able to be that scorer and be that player that Pitt needed. That's what I'm seeing here in this situation. Is there someone that the staff thinks that they can move into that second lineup and get a guy like Ian Jackson into the starting lineup and bring in a different type of playmaking ability with size, with length in that starting lineup and being able to get an older veteran guy coming off the bench? Now, you're not throwing the ACC reigning ACC player of the year to the bench, but I would say, Elliott or Seth, one of those guys. And it's not a knock to them and what they're doing. It's what's best for the team. How can we get a better rhythm? How can we get lineups that have continuity and that are playing well together and that plays towards the strength of the team? That's where I'm coming from. Not knocking those guys.
From your playing days at all, do you remember any like uncomfortable conversations that you guys had to have either player to player or coach to player where somebody kind of has to come to the realization for this team to do better, I kind of have to take a step back or not a step back per se, but maybe adjust my role and what I'm doing from personal experience?
One of the most mentally strong guys that I know is Nate Britt. I love Nate Britt. Come in, McDonald's All-American, top recruit in the country. And I come in and I end up starting my sophomore year and he's coming off the bench. And we get to the national championship. Like, he could have said, you know what, forget this. I'm transferring, sit out a year, because you had to sit out a year in that time. But it was what was best for the team. It's what worked for our team. And he embraced the role and he came off the bench and was the key to the why we got to the national championship. Like, it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It's really hard, but you have to do what's best for the team, and you have to put guys and players in different positions that's going to play to their strengths for them individually, but the team together. And just the rhythm is off right now, and there needs to be a different change, or there needs to be change with the lineup to bring in some more length, bring in another guy like Ian Jackson, who we've seen can score off the dribble, but he also makes those plays where it just has a knack for it, where, defensively he's getting, contesting on defense and getting wide open layups. So Nate Britt is an example of how you can have an older guy take on that role.
quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you can visit Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. And if not, no worries. You could go online to johnnytshirt.com. Now that basketball season is here, they have everything that the Carolina basketball fan could possibly want. The hats, the T-shirts, the jerseys, you name it, they've got it. They've got the cold weather gear. They've got the Nike. They've got the stocking stuffers in time for the holidays. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders. It's great people, great customer service. Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Support the people that support us. Joel, flipping to the other side of the court, defensively, it just didn't feel like you never really want to say. One of the things I hate when people say is like the effort wasn't there, because when you're watching them, you can, for the most part, if you've ever been in that locker room, you can assume that the guys out there are trying their hardest. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride out there. So I don't necessarily like when people say, like, you know, that the effort wasn't there. But yesterday when I'm watching this game, it's hard to come up with anything else when you're watching Alabama, and it feels like Alabama is getting every look they want. Whatever the coach's scouting report was and whatever the points of emphasis were, it felt like that wasn't relayed to the team when you're watching this Alabama team shoot for 50% from the field and 36% from three. What did you see on the defensive end, and what can Carolina do to adjust and get significantly better on that side of the ball? Because I think Hubert Davis kind of knows that's where it's going to start with his team.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm glad you put it that way, because obviously the goal isn't to go out there and just say, not have the intensity and effort. Obviously,
nobody's trying to get embarrassed.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not like shooting 50% and you can't stop anyone. No one wants that as a player. You do not want that at all. Point of emphasis is on the defensive end. To your point, the effort was there, but to me, it looked like confusion. Like, there were a couple of plays where Alabama just blew by, and like our players were looking like, are you going to help? Like, are you going to tell me to switch? Are you going to take this person? Like, it just looks like confusion to me. But this is the problem. And when we played, we were up the line. We wanted to stop the flow of the ball. We didn't want teams just coming out running dummy offense against our defense. Carolina plays in the gaps. They don't play up the lane. And then they also switch. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it, because I think switching makes you lazy as a defender, especially when you're switching just for no reason, like a simple handoff. I'm not a huge fan of that, but that's what's happening, is they're switching so much, and instead of it being a contact switch, there's pointing, or there's assuming I'm going to switch, and then all of a sudden Alabama is creating that confusion, which is what you want to do offensively to create that advantage, is create confusion. And now you're in rotations, and that's what it looked like for Carolina. That's why I'm not a huge fan of just sitting back in gaps and allowing the defense or offense just to move the ball and then point switching, because that doesn't work. It makes you lazy as a defender. That's why I want to see Carolina maybe switch up the coverages a little bit. Maybe play up the line, or don't switch unnecessary handoffs or, exchanges on the backside. I just think the defense right now just looks confused more than it being an effort thing. To your point, they don't go out there and just say, don't give any effort. It's more confusion and too much thinking.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Congruity. Congruity is the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners, payroll, HR, and employee benefit needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. Email is matt@congruityhr.com. That email again is matt@congruityhr.com.
All right, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, and I think one of the worrying concerns for this North Carolina team was you're listening to some of the players in the post game, and you lose a game at home like that, and kind of get run out of your own building. There's going to be a lot of dejection. But RJ Davis kind of hinted at it, where he was kind of saying, we all need to buy in. A lot of the players mentioned a lack of energy. When the points that are being taken away from these post-game press conferences are, we need to buy in, we need to have better energy. How concerning, I guess, is that, when it seems like from a talent perspective and what you bring to the court every night, those are pretty easy to control. And if those aren't brought, it's a lot different than your jump shot not making it to the game.
Yeah, I agree. And those, don't take those post game interviews for granted, because they're pointing out people, and that needs to be addressed within the team. Like, that needs to be we're meeting in the locker room, and we're sitting down and we're getting to the bottom of this, because that's what it takes. Those interviews, they're pointing out someone, whether it's themselves or someone else that they're seeing not giving energy, or some guys complaining, coach isn't letting me do this, I can't do that, or they're messing up my minutes. Like, that's something that has to be dealt with in the locker room. Offensively, you can't allow not having great games offensively dictate your defense. Like you said, defense, energy, effort, intensity, those are all controllable aspects. The ball doesn't need to go on the basket for that. So they need to get that under control. And with RJ, the leader, he sees something that needs to be addressed in the locker room. And it seems like the energy and effort isn't there for a lot of guys, and that they're just not on the same page.
From your playing days, did you guys ever have any like closed doors meeting where you're like, coaches, give us 10, 15 minutes right now?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I can't talk about that. I can't say what.
You don't have to share what happened,
what was said, but it got nasty a couple of times. But it takes that, because look, this is a complicated game, man. And you got guys from different backgrounds that's built different, that some got the dog in them and some don't. And that's just that is what it is. But to play on this level, you got to have some intensity, man. You got to have some dog about you. And if you don't, then this is what happens. You get ran through. And that has to be dealt with. Theo alluded to it on his podcast. There'll be time with Bryce Johnson that, like, coach would say, like, sorry guys, this is my fault. And my man Theo, as a freshman, little skinny Theo, getting up saying, no, coach, this isn't your fault. This is us. Like, Theo, sit down. But that's what it is. It's like the coaches can only do so much. At some point, the players have to take accountability and say, coach, look, y'all gave us the game plan. It's us. We didn't have the effort. We didn't have the intensity. And that's what it looks like. Like, that's why I said, don't take for granted what RJ said. There are guys that aren't giving energy and effort and that aren't buying into what's going on.
In 2015, when for Carolina football, we lost to South Carolina to open the season.
Yeah.
And I think in that post-game locker room, we kind of had that realization in our head for a second, like, oh no, like we might like be bad again this year. And I remember the next day we had like a players only meeting where it was like, look around, look how much talent is in this room. I don't care what the coach calls. I don't care what play call comes in. Find a way. Find a way to make a play. Like, enough with the excuses. And I think that is a sign of a good team, where you have not only great coaches, but you have great players and great leaders that kind of hold everybody accountable. But we will see how Carolina bounces back in this one. They will be back in action this Saturday, 2 p.m. from the Dean Dome against Georgia Tech. Joel, man, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Yes, sir.